And then as we covered the different profitability, wholesale being kind of the lower hand on the profitability scale, and then the hybrid model being on the upper hand. So here you have kind of a very high-level overview of the model that, as I mentioned, really anyone that wants to take a container farming business can implement.
Okay, so I think we're going to get started now. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nia Price, and I am on Growcer's marketing team. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll be moderating today's session. I'm here with Florent Schmahl, who is Growcer's Chief of Staff, and we'll actually be joined later by Nick Halverson, who's a project enablement specialist at Growcer and helps prospective farmers like yourselves every step of the way through the process. Today, we'll be going over the different business models that our grocer farmers are using across the country and how you can evaluate which one is the best fit for your project. This is actually the second webinar in our three-part series on Container Farming 101. The previous one was on July 13th, and we had one of our farmers from Prince Rupert, BC join us and went over all the different things to consider before starting a container farming project. The recording for that is available on our website, and we'll also be sure to send it to everyone as well as a follow-up to this session. The next session, which is the final one in this series, is on August 10th, and it will focus on financing your project. And we're very excited to be partnering with Farm Credit Canada, who's one of the leading agricultural lenders in Canada. And we'll be going over the different ways that you can finance your project and what that process really looks like, and going a bit more in depth with that. A reminder that we'll have a Q&A period at the end of this session, and there's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So throughout the entire webinar, be sure to insert any questions that you have, and we'll answer a lot of them live, or we'll be sure to follow up with any ones that we don't get to. And we are recording this entire session, and we'll be sure to send you the full recording and the slides after as well. So I'll send it over to Flo now to get started, and we're very excited to see what everyone has to say today.
Thank you, Nia, and hi, everybody. As Nia mentioned, my name is Florent Schmahl. I'm the Chief of Staff here at Growcer. A little bit about myself, and to explain a little bit the accent hearing, I'm originally from France. I grew up selling fruit and vegetables on the farmers market with my parents. And aside from working with Growcer, I also launched with my family during the COVID time. In April 2020, a food delivery business where we deliver fruit and vegetables directly to people's home in the little area of France where we're from, called the Alps. So very much in the mountain. So I'm a bit familiar not only with the Growcer system and our grower and how to operate the farm, but also the other side of the equation, which is actually running such business and selling produce directly to the consumer. So very excited to walk you through the different ways our growers are leveraging their farm to reach out to their customer and distribute their produce. We're going to be covering a few things today. So first, I wanted to kind of share an overview of the Growcer farms in terms of the production capabilities, how many, the type of crops that we grow, and kind of a little reminder about who we are as Growcer, and also go over the different costs associated to starting a Growcer project. And then from there, we were going to take a deep dive in the main business model that we are seeing used and applied by our grower across our farm network, with the expected revenue, expected profitability from them, and expected return on investment. We were going to be comparing also those models side by side. And then finally, Nick from our team will kind of walk you through the different steps that we guide and support our customer in setting up their Growcer project and business model. At any time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We will try to address them live during this presentation, and for sure at the end of that first part. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and let's get started. So first, I wanted to remind a little bit everybody of what is Growcer and kind of why we are in business today. So we're very much a socially driven and minded enterprise. We started 4 years ago with really the goal of making local and secure food available to everyone, and started by working with remote communities in the Arctic Circle in Canada and diverse indigenous communities across the country. What drives us at Growcer is really to build turnkey farming solution that can be deployed really anywhere under any conditions. They can be shipped by boat, they can be brought in by trains or by truck. So there is really no limitation into where you can grow, as long as you have access to electricity and water. But we don't only build a solution that are like deployable anywhere. We also support our customer from the moment where they have the idea of starting to grow food locally, all the way to like making sure that their project and the business model is sustainable week over week, month over month, year over year. So we're very much going to be partnering with you from start to finish and every step along the way by providing you the training and the guidance to really making sure that your project is achieving the goal that you had in mind at the beginning, and really having the maximum impact in your local community. It's also very important for us that the projects are self-sufficient. So you will see today in different business models that we will be covering, but you know, those operating a grocery farm is a legitimate business. It provides revenue, it provides profit, it can be scaled. Those are very important to us. Along the same line, we also developed our farm and our services to making sure that they are very accessible. So anyone that has this interest and this drive to grow and provide food that is sustainably grown and at a hyper local level is really able to do so by working with us. We don't expect our customer to have horticulture or farming background before getting started. All we require from you is the drive and the passion to take on such project, and then we will be collaborating with you for every step following that first introduction and start. So all we need is passion, and we will be working with you for the rest. In terms of initial investment overview for a grocer project, so here we will be covering a one farm project. Our farm being modular, we can combine them and kind of connect them a bit like Lego blocks. But here in this case, our most popular use case today are one farm projects, and that we can scale over time. So for a project, you're roughly looking, and this is very much an average of a startup cost of 245,000 Canadian dollars. This includes the farm, the preparation of the site that will be receiving the farm, the actual installation of the farm, all the onboarding process and the training of the team that will be operating and running the farm. It includes as well the supply to grow and produce food, and the ongoing support that grocer team will be providing you every step of the way. So that initial investment is roughly around $250,000, and it varies on the project to project basis by a little bit. Then in terms of the operating costs, as you can see, the major ongoing costs category will be labor to operate a farm, from mostly the maintenance part and the growing and seeding, harvesting, transplanting. So as we always say, like everything that encompasses the activity within the farm and bring the produce outside of the farm, you're roughly looking at 25 hours a week. And that's roughly 50% of the operating costs that you are supporting with the project on a weekly basis. The other major cost component will be utilities that varies based on the cost of electricity in the region that you are based out of. The growing material, the software that allows us to monitor and control and remotely control the farm on an ongoing basis. Because we're dealing with infrastructure, there is a depreciation that we want to take into account, and maintaining the farm, all the different supplies and everything to like upkeep and making sure the farm is always operating following the best procedure. So on average operating expenses, you're roughly looking at $1,000 per week. Here too, it varies on a project to project basis, and when Nick's work with our customer, usually, we do a breakdown and estimate of what will be the operating cost for your project in your region. In terms of production capacity, when the farm is fully outfitted to grow a maximum amount of plants, we're looking at roughly shy above 2,000 growing slots within the farm, and that produce because we are always in a process of seedling, transplanting, and harvesting. 2,000 growing slots produce roughly 500 mature commercial size plants per week. So this number of 500 plants is the number of actual plants that you can sell week over week to the different distribution channel that you will be putting in place. Then in terms of the plant themselves, we have few key categories that are very popular among our growers. The first one being herbs, which includes mainly basil, mint, parsley, and cilantro, dill, and some others, but basil being the number one, I would say, popular herbs that we see because there is a very strong market demand for fresh and tasty basil. Then we have all the different type of lettuces from butterhead to romaine, etc. We have a lot of different lettuce that you can choose and grow on a week-to-week basis. Then the different Asian greens, think about bok choy and other greens like those one. Kale, spinach, arugula, and finally spring mix, which are usually the little boxes with different type of small leaf of different leafy greens. Here you have on the right beside the unique conditioning, you have a sense of the type of packaging that in which we put those different plants. So for herbs, we're looking into 20-gram packages. For lettuce and Asian green, we're looking at actual full-size head of lettuce, the same way you might see them at your farmers market. And then for kale, spinach, arugula, and spring mix, different size of packages that are very similar to the size you can find in different farmers markets and grocery store. And in terms of maximal yield, so that maximum weekly yield that you see is if you were to grow herbs or lettuce or Asian green as the only crops you will be growing in a farm. But the beauty of indoor farming and containerized farming is that you can combine different crops and grow multiple crops at a time. That allows for diversity in the offering that you're going to be suggesting and actually offering to your customer. And our team will help you plan the different crops that you can grow on a week-to-week basis and kind of put together a little schedule that will align with the demand of your customer or the business model that you want to undertake. In terms of average retail price, we're looking between actual like consumer prices, that price that you and I will be paying if we were to buy the produce directly at the grocery store or in farmers market or directly at the farm, is between $2 and $4. And something that's very important to note, and why we may be saying $2 to $4, and sometimes some of the customers are selling the produce for more than those prices, is we cannot really compare. Even though we're growing, lettuces and different type of herbs, we cannot really compare them with like the produce that are maybe shipped from the other side of the continent that have been trucked in and drove many distances in order to get into your plate. Here we're really looking at produce that have not only extremely fresh and great taste, but a lot of other value added. So due to the nature of containerized farming, they are grown using 90% less water than traditional farming. The volume of produce that is grown within container is 95% less than in terms of like land use that if they were to be grown outside. Because hydroponic growth allows us to grow and harvest living plants, they stay extremely fresh in the shelf, but also in your fridge, compared to like plants that regular lettuce that you might be buying in your current grocery store or retailers. Very important as well, the produce are extremely traceable because we are producing them hyper-locally and they're sold within your community. We know where the produce come from. We know who even seeded them and who harvested them. So there is a very strong traceability in the produce. Within our farm, we don't use any synthetic pesticide, only biological form pesticide. Once again, due to the nature of the hyper-local growth, the transportation time and cost and CO2 emission related to transportation are reduced to almost nothing. The produce are extremely nutritional. Like hydroponic is really made to is really optimized for the health and the efficiency of growth of the plant. So trying a lettuce coming from our farm or basil coming from our farm is like nothing else you've ever tried before. You can actually taste flavor and crunchiness and freshness, which is quite amazing. And the two last but not least argument that really are important to put forward, and all those arguments that are important to put forward, not only to convince you to grow this type of produce when you're thinking about such project, but mostly to convince the consumer that will be buying your own produce, whether it's like the local retailers or grocers that you're going to approach and say, hey, would you like to buy my herbs on a weekly basis, or the consumer coming to your farm. Those are very much key argument that will help people really feel attached and willing to buy from you, and also justify potentially a higher price point for the produce. So the last 2 points that are to me extremely important are the local, like every project being agro-local, you are definitely supporting the local economy. The dollar injected into your project will be living within your community and really growing into the community. We talk in social return on investment, and the rough estimate is $1 invested in your project like Growcer will translate into $35 within your community over time. And last but not least is reduce food waste. We have a very strong ability to control the supply and demand, based on seasonality or the need of your community. So we can really grow close to exactly what will be purchased and consumed. So in most of the farm that we have running, like food waste is close to 0%. So very encouraging you to, when you're thinking about those, like undertaking a containerized farming business, is really that not only are you going to be growing produce in a very technological advanced system, agro-local, is that the produce that's going to come out of it are very much high value added produce. So with that in mind, and kind of the whole context in terms of like the initial cost of investment, the ongoing operating costs, the actual quality of the produce coming off the farm, those are the pillars in which we can formulate and articulate a business model. So with no further ado, let's jump right in. So the first business model I wanted to cover with you all is direct-to-consumer subscription model, so DTC for direct-to-consumer. So here the idea is that customer, since you can predict and reliably produce on a weekly basis, 52 weeks of the year, it's a great way for a subscription model where people will subscribe to your box, a bit like a CSA box model, if some of you are familiar with it, where people will subscribe to your services, and every week we'll be getting a box from you of, we can design the box with you, but like 3, 4, 5, 6 different produce coming out of the farm, and they will be every week subscribing and can automatically paying for that service to be delivered to them. In terms of who can run such a business model, it's really anyone. We've seen this model in operation in indigenous community. We see this model in operation in rural area. We see this model in operation in more urban centers. So really anyone can use this model. And in this case, your customer will be your local community around the farm. And I will cover in the next slide kind of the different things to consider, the checklist when you want to implement such model. But really here the idea is to create a brand and really marketize not only the produce but the whole operation, and really get people to buy into the purpose of what you are doing. We always repeat that to our customer, but also to ourselves here at Growcer, is that consumer will not buy what you're doing, they will buy why you're doing it. And having a direct to subscription model is a really, really great way to really, promote your story, promote your brand, and really get people bite into you why you're doing a containerized business in your community. So if we look a bit at the number, and here we're taking very conservative estimates. We don't want to send false expectation. And once again, Nick from our team will work with you on a one-to-one basis to really estimate what will be the maximum revenue and the profit in your specific case based on where your project will be. but a very conservative average based on roughly 140 subscribers a week coming out of the farm will be shy above $93,000 a year in annual revenue. In terms of profit, without taking into account financing, so we have different ways of offering financing for farms. So without financing, the average profit is shy above $21,000. And here's the return on investment for the entire project, not just for investment on the farm, but the project that I described at the beginning of the presentation of $245,000. Here you're looking at roughly 7.8 years in return. Something I probably should have mentioned earlier, but like our farms are really built to last 30 years. So, you know, you have, after that initial repayment period, you have many, many years to enjoy a pretty successful operation. In terms of the checklist for such a model, and here we have an example of Yaga, which is the brand created by Gimac Mackay in Prince Rupert, BC. Yaga means at the bottom of at the foot of the mountain, which is exactly where the farm is. You have a mountain right at the back of the farm. They launched a subscription early, like late 2020, earlier 2021. Actually, Blair, who's the manager of the project, was in our first part series of this Container Farming 101, and it goes in depth into how he implemented that direct-to-consumer model for Gimac Mackay. I strongly encourage you to listen to the recording. But really here, the idea, the few key elements to take into consideration when you're thinking about the direct-to-consumer model is, number one, select your delivery model. You have really two options. One is offering pickup, the same way Gimac Mackay and Yaga offers it in Prince Rupert, or you can also offer direct delivery, so a ship like delivering people directly at their doorstep. Those two have advantages and disadvantages. I won't go into too much detail, but it mostly lie into labor commitments. Then, you know, very important to referring to the, you know, why you will start this business. It's really important to create a brand and tell your story, and that's really what will get people to, you know, get interested into your services on top of the produce. When you have kind of defined how you want to run the model and your brand, then it's time to set up the actual storefront, in this case online. So you're looking to set up an online store with a subscription ability where people can subscribe to your service. So this way, the collecting the payment on a week-to-week basis is automated. You have a great Canadian partner here that offers an e-commerce solution for food growers called Local Line. They're based in Ontario. I strongly encourage you to check them out. And it also provides a lot of content around how to market your food business. So once you have, I would say, the infrastructure and the logistics figured out, then it's a time to promote your service locally. And here, because you are dealing with a very much local business, you can your chance to really reach and get the attention of your consumer is pretty strong. So traditional media, if you have a local radio, local newsletter, local magazine, are a great way to communicate about the project. We found that from a PR standpoint, journalists are always very excited when projects like that get launched in the community, and will write and cover your story in their newspaper or online newsletters. And another great way to reach out to your customer is social media. It's very likely that in a town or in a neighborhood that you live in, there is a specific Facebook group belonging to that town or that neighborhood, and dropping a message there explaining who you are and what you're doing will go a long way into getting into the radar of your potential customer, and usually get all those posts that our customer are writing in their local group, Facebook group, gets a lot of traction and a lot of engagement. And then finally, it's very, very important to nurture your customer. Your customer are your best advertising vehicle. If you are making sure that they are delighted by your service, delighted by your produce, they will be your best way to acquire new customer over time. So always, you know, nurture your customer and making sure they're happy with your produce. So that's an overview of the direct to consumer subscription business model. I will be comparing that model with the other that I will be mentioning in a minute toward the end in the comparison table. Now, kind of the opposite of direct-to-consumer is the wholesale model. So here, the idea is to sell directly to a distributor or to a customer that will buy your produce in bulk. Once again, anyone can launch such business model. You all have local institutions, hospitals, schools are nearby your place, or within an acceptable distance. Most of us have restaurants or local grocery stores that are all potential customers for such produce. So it's just a matter of surveying the market and see who will be interested in your produce. So the type of customer, as I just mentioned, you're looking at grocery stores, schools, hospitals, restaurants, and any other local institution. And here the numbers are slightly different. We're looking at maximum annual revenue of around $67,000. The wholesale price here that we base these numbers on is around $2 for lettuce and $1.5 for a pack of herbs. And within your farm, you will be growing 60% herb and 50% lettuce. And you can see we also assuming $20 per hour for labor and a quite average high electricity cost and a plant loss of 10%. So annual revenue here will be 67. Average annual profit will be 15,000, and the return on investment for the entire project around 16 years. Once again, our farms are built to last 30. So there's still some interest in that model, and we will cover them compare them in a minute. But at the high level here, really what you are looking for this model is a simplicity to some extent. Like you are dealing with, in the previous model, you will be looking at managing a customer base between 100 or 150 customers on a weekly basis, and ensuring that 100 or 150 people are satisfied with your produce and engage with your services, requires some time and attention. The advantage of wholesale is that you might be dealing with 1, 2, 3 customers, 3 stakeholder max that will be taking care of buying all your production. So this offers a certain peace of mind and less people to manage and oversee in terms of expectation management. Then another model that is very interesting. Before I go ahead of myself. In terms of the checklist to set up a wholesale model, really recommend to also start with a brand. The same way creating a brand and telling a story will attract people in your community to your services. Creating a brand and telling a story will also make it easier for institutional buyer and grocer to kind of get behind your produce. They will understand kind of the value added of your produce better, and they will understand also maybe why you might be asking for a higher price point than how they used to get their similar produce that get imported or trucked from far away. So creating a brand is always a good start. Then prospect potential wholesale buyers. So here you can use the table I showed earlier with the different volume that will be coming out of your farm on a weekly basis, and can assess how much different potential buyers will like to buy from you on a weekly basis and what price. So it gives you a strong ability to have a pretty I would say tailored and adjusted financial forecast. You want to then sign relationship agreements. I think a handshake is great, but like having an actual contract will give you the peace of mind that someone is committed to buy your produce on a weekly basis. And then once again, not that I want to sound like a broken record, but like even though you might be dealing with 3 or 4 customers instead of 140, 150 customers, you want to nurture them, making sure they're happy and making sure they want to keep buying from you. So nurturing a customer is always extremely important. Finally, like another model I want to cover quickly. It's basically an hybrid of the 2 previous models that I covered, and this one will kind of take the best of both worlds. So in this case, you're doing one channel will be to delivering a weekly subscription box to direct to consumer, and then another channel will be to selling some produce wholesale. once again, anybody can do it. Your customer will be all of the above that we just covered earlier. And here the idea and the strategy is to kind of think about locking in between 80 to 100 customers on a weekly basis with the subscription and the recurring payments. So you have the peace of mind that you're going to have a recurring amount of revenue coming in week over week over week by doing the direct to consumer model. And then with the spare production capacity that you have in the farm is to kind of produce the highest value added crops, or in this case, very often it's basil or herbs, and or sometimes very specific special crops that are in need or asking in your community, and sell those at the wholesale level. So you can, you can really maximize the wholesale part by selling high value crops, and you can leverage a direct to consumer model to really cover all operating costs and guaranteeing some revenue on a week to week basis. So this model is really interesting. You can go all the way to $93,000 in annual revenue. Even, it can be optimized even further. You're looking at an average profit of 41, and here payback period of under 6 years. And the checklist is basically combining everything that you have to do. So the downside of that model is that you basically have to deal with 2 channels. So everything that you have to do to set up a direct to consumer model and a wholesale model applies here. Finally, a model that I wanted to cover because it's very popular among our customer base. Most of our projects, or I would say we have 31 projects live across Canada or getting implemented right now across Canada, and almost close to half of them are very much impact driven. So the goal of the project are not necessarily to generate the maximum profit or the maximum revenue, but instead is to offer a sustainable way for community members to access nutritious and healthy food. So really here, when we work with our customer, is we want to build a model that will guarantee, in terms of revenue, the covering the operating costs and the repayment of their initial investment, and then maximizing the volume of food that can be donated or sold, almost at cost. So here, once again, if you are looking to do more, going more of a social enterprise road and profit, and you might be more interested into breaking even and profit is not a priority, then we will work with you on an impact model and design that with you. And in terms of checking, like the checklist for the impact model, it's basically the same checklist than for the wholesale model, but instead of looking for a wholesale partner, here you will be looking at an impact partner. So think about your local food bank or your local health department, or even schools and different education institutions. And of course, nurture your customer. It's very important that they see value into the service that you do and get behind the service you're offering. Now, I just wanted to kind of put all those 4 models that I described side by side and compare them around 5 main criteria. So the first criteria is really ease of implementation. So how easy it is to get started and get that business model off the ground. So here, no surprise, the 2 easiest one will be the wholesale and impact model, because you only have to find 1, 2, 3, maximum 4 partner to distribute the produce to, and when that is achieved, you can secure the entire production of your farm. Then the direct to consumer model, here what makes it slightly harder to implement is that you need to find 140 people, 140 households that would be willing to buy produce from you on a weekly basis. It's definitely achievable. Once again, referring to Gimac Mackay and Prince Rupert, when they did a survey in the community of who would be interested in subscribing to the models, they were expecting 40 to 50 responses, and they got way over, I think, 110, 120 people that signed up right away for the service. So there is a strong appeal there. And then the hybrid model is the hardest because you're combining the both. In terms of ease of maintenance, very similarly than the ease of implementation. Wholesale impact are the easiest because you're dealing with less stakeholders. In terms of labor commitment, we also compare the same. Wholesale, you ship once a week in bulk to few suppliers. With direct to consumer, when it's involved, you might have to drive to people's houses, or you always have people coming to your farm and picking up produce, so that can be quite time consuming. Control over customer experience in the direct to consumer model, this is where you have the best controls because you are connecting on a week-to-week basis with your customer directly. So you have full control over your story and how they perceive your services. And the least amount of control is really when you go wholesale, because you have limited visibility around how your produce are getting displayed and communicated inside the store or inside the restaurant. And then as we covered the different profitability, wholesale being kind of the lower hand on the profitability scale, and then the hybrid model being on the upper hand. So here you have kind of a very high level overview of the model that, as I mentioned, really anyone that want to take a container farming business can implement, and you can see how they compare one to another. One last model I wanted to cover is for more of a specific type of grocer customer, and we have quite a few operating under that. Models are for people who already have customers or members. So think about actual grocers or membership-based organization or farmers with existing CSA box. So here in this case, you will be looking at, diversifying revenue or adding a new offering to an existing services. So you already have the customer base. And really this model is quite interesting because you are saving some costs by producing the produce yourself and also selling at the direct to consumer price. So you have really much the best of both worlds. On terms of annual revenue, you're looking at around over $100,000 in annual revenue with a profit of roughly $45,000. It really depends here around the type of packaging and everything you put in place. And the payback period is around 5.5 years. So very efficient model, but here the caveat is that you need an existing community, an existing customer or membership base before going down that road. But if you already do have such things, then you have a very strong business case to be made here by implementing a local, like by growing food hyper locally for your existing customer. And we see this model being very, very popular, especially since the whole COVID pandemic started, and people wanted to kind of show their commitment to local retailers and local grocers and local local businesses as a whole, and so offering a local solution to your community will resonate and go a long way. So that's about it for us today in terms of the different business model and kind of how they compare one another. So in a few minutes that we have left, I would like to introduce you to Nick, who kind of will walk you through the different steps that we guide our customer when they are interested in starting a container farming business. Nick?
Thanks, Flo. Well done, and thanks for the introduction. Are you able to hear me, Flo, and see me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure that's working first. So yeah, like Flo was saying, with all these different business models, of course, there's different steps that we want to take. And essentially my role here at Growcer, of course, my name is Nick, is I'm in business development and project enablement. So I want to be able to, engage with folks like yourself and help basically check off a lot of those checklists that Flo was bringing up earlier. So starting with exploring your business model. So you can reach out to me after this. My information's there, and then these are the things that we want to get started on. So in terms of the business model, we want to make sure that we have something that's going to work for your area. So that's in terms of the things that Flo was mentioning, like your channels of sale, your site location. Do you have a champion on the ground? Is that going to be yourself, or are you going to be able to hire someone to work? So those different sort of nuances of the project. Number two would be survey your market. So help you and guide you through talking to local institutions or retailers or potential buyers of the product or where you're going to distribute it. And then kind of help you in ways to do that. I think a popular one like listed there is Facebook. So it can be as simple as putting up on a local Facebook page like a survey on who might be interested in subscribing to a local food box or a subscription food box, for example. 3 would be validating all the great information that you'd be able to collect from your local community. And then 4, of course, would be help you explore the funding or financing options that would be best suited for yourself. And then, of course, get growing. And these are all the things I want to help you get started on. It's my role here at Growcer. My email's there. So I just want to encourage anyone who is really actively looking at starting a project to reach out to me via email, or you can call the number there as well. I think it's extension 706. And we can get started on looking at your project a little bit more closely together.
Unique. No, I guess it's time for a question, and I'll hand over to Nia.
Awesome, thank you both. And it was great to hear everything about the different business models that we have at Growcer and learn more about our various customers using those models. Reminder to everyone who's joined us today, make sure that you're using the Q&A option in order to put in your questions. We're excited to answer as many as possible before getting to the end of our webinar. And if we don't answer them in time, we'll be sure to follow up with you. Also, our next session on August 10th focuses on the financing side of the project. So we won't be answering those questions today, but we'll take note and be sure to answer them in our next session. So make sure you register. The first question that we have here for you, I think Flo will probably, this one be a good question, is what regulatory requirements are involved in growing and are they incorporated in our business plan?
Yeah, so it will really depend on a case-by-case basis. Like if you are growing your produce for your own local community, you are not planning on shipping outside of the province that you are in, the local, the different certification are quite, limited, and we will walk you through the different what might be related to your project. If you plan on shipping your product outside of the province, in this case, you do have some certification regulatory step that you have to undertake, but this is something we will be assessing with you and guiding you through. And from a Growcer perspective, we will very likely meet all the requirements coming from the certification.
Okay, perfect. And a follow-up question to that would be, do we provide seeds annually as part of the $245,000, or is there an additional annual cost for that?
Well, that's a great question. So the 245 costs, I'll bring back this slide because I see there were quite a few questions around it. So it's very much the everything cost to get started. So it includes things from Growcer, so the farm, all the first year of growing supply and growing materials, us coming on site in your location for a week to install the farm and making sure everything is doing and ready to go. It will cover, we have a roughly 4 or 5 each months of onboarding to really turning you into a professional grower. So like every single week, our team of horticulture success and farm success team will be guiding you on how to run the farm, providing you some training. And, at the end of that program, you are truly a green thumb and you are, you can feel very comfortable in the farm. And then that ongoing support is also included there. Then on the annual basis past that first year in terms of recurring costs, you are looking at roughly $7,000 a year for everything software. So we have licenses for software to help you track the environmental control of the farm and track the different yield and how your farm is doing. And we can access that from our headquarters in Ottawa and guide you through it if any issue happen. So for software is roughly $7,000, and then for the growing supply, so the growing medium, which we use rock wool, and the seeds, it will be $7,000 a month. Not a month, a year. But you are not. This is very much optional if you want to purchase those through Growcer or purchase those directly yourself. We do have a vetted seed that we know will work very well inside our farm in preferred pricing, but you're free to approach that resupply the way you want to. So the only, I would say, recurring cost that you can expect on a year-to-year basis is the software subscription and the licenses.
Perfect. And along those same lines, we had a question if our models assume that there's zero cost for land in which the container will be located on, or if that's incorporated in the cost as well.
Yeah, so that like we take into account roughly in this model at $25,000 for what we call site preparation. So sometimes this includes leasing the land from someone if you don't already own it. Sometimes purchasing the land. The land that we're looking is pretty small in terms of size. So if you need to acquire a piece of land, you're looking at something that's 50 foot long and 10 to 12 foot wide. But most of the customer working usually already have the land in mind on where they would like to locate the farm. But site preparation will mean kind of making sure the ground is leveled, putting some piles that will support the farm, bringing water, electricity, and internet up to the farm. So for some of the customer, the cost of site prep is under $5,000, and some others it's more, close to $30,000.
Definitely, and that makes sense in terms of the variability there. And as well for the labor hours, does that estimate include packaging, or is that just the labor to operate our farms?
So the 25 hours is really around, as I mentioned, the everything that is within the farm. So seeding, transplanting, and then harvesting, and then kind of think about it as you're coming out of the farm with like big blue bin full of delicious produce, and then you will have to, in addition to that, you will have to spend some time packaging the produce based on how, because we cannot really estimate that, because for direct to consumer, it might be everything in like a weekly basket, so no real packaging needed. If you go into wholesale, they might have some very specific requirements in terms of like the type of clamshell that it comes into and whatnot. So that will be on top, and then actual distributing the produce and handing over the produce to the buyer is also come on top of the 25 hours. But we already like part of the operating model and the roughly $1,000 a week of operating costs is by already providing a salary for that 25 hours piece of running the farm.
Great, that's an awesome breakdown, and I think it definitely clarifies how that time's used. For both Nick and Flo, as I think you work with customers at different points, so I think you could both kind of address this question a bit differently, but what's the most effective way to ask a Facebook group or prospective customers to take surveys or to get their input on if this project is the right fit?
That's a really good question. I guess the simple answer would be there's not a best way. It would really just be finding, the right groups that you think would, like finding the right audience, finding a place, like that's why I mentioned Facebook, is because it's a place where you can reach a lot of people with simply putting up one poll. Of course, there's no guarantees that people will respond to poll as well. So it's a great question. I think, just finding the right groups to be able to post it in where you can see that there's already lots of engagement on the page and there's lots of traffic in that group already. That being said, I think also maybe just being tenacious about it. If you don't get a great response after the first one, it doesn't hurt to just try again and try again and try again. As we all know, sometimes these things just take time to catch on. In terms of in person, like if you're just looking at trying to get in, to like a local store or a farmer's market, I mean, phone calls, of course, but even just showing up and trying to find the right people to talk to and just having conversations. One conversation can start a really great and fruitful relationship for both parties, and we've seen that happen. So I guess there's not a catch-all answer to how to do it the best. I would just say if it doesn't work out the first time, keep trying and then maybe just try different avenues. And again, like these are absolutely things that if you're actively looking at starting a project, I'd be more than happy to discuss and help out. And I'm not sure if Flo has anything to add to that.
No, I think you gave a pretty good overview from like I can share, I guess, a little personal story regarding the business that I started with my family in France in April 2020. even though my parents had been on farmers market for over 40 years, like they never had the customer base per se, but they were, very present in the farmers market on a weekly basis in that little town called Chamonix. So when we launched that direct-to-consumer subscription business, we posted on the People of the Town Facebook group, and yeah, overnight we got 250 orders because people really liked the story we had on that post. So I'm sure if you think about it or look on the social media, there is very, very likely a strong chance that you have a pretty active Facebook group in the area that you live in or where the farm will be located. Yeah, it's a very free and easy way to test the appetite of the market. And then, as Nick rightfully mentioned, if that don't work, don't lose hope. It might just have been the wrong timing or wrong time of the day, and you can try other avenue as well.
Awesome. And the next question would be, is it better to focus on one model or diversify to reduce risk? And I know, Flo, you presented kind of that hybrid model, but for the customers that Growcer does have and those farmers, what do you think would probably be the least risky of the options?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like ultimately diversifying risk is a great approach to have, but it doesn't necessarily, even here when you look at the hybrid model that we have right here, like you don't need to implement both channels right away. Usually this is a project that you are starting and that will have, a long lasting presence and impact in your community and in your life to some degree. So you can really think about the ramp up time where you pick either, you already have like few restaurants or few grocers or few institutions that are like begging to buy your produce, look no further, maximize this channel, get your hand, roll up your sleeve, get your hand dirty in a farm, making sure you can consistently grow week over week and make them happy. And then when you feel very comfortable with this channel, then it's time maybe to explore the other one. Like, truthfully, it can be, especially if you've never farmed before, grow produce before, it can be slightly overwhelming to think that you can have a farm coming into your community and that you're going to be in charge of running it, or someone within your team in charge of running it, and you have to figure it out. But making sure you're doing a good job of operating the farm, but then making sure of maximizing the revenue side of things. So that's really part of that of the service that we try to offer at Growcer. Like every project have a farm success team that covers everything within the farm, so plant and technical issues, so you're never alone if anything happens when you feel unsure, but that also cover guiding you week over week for as long as you choose to be a grocer farmer into implementing your business model and distributing your produce. So we will work with you on like a stage approach to get you to the maximum revenue, and one step at a time.
Perfect. I think the stage approach is a really great idea and definitely helps in reducing those risks as you go along. And also you can change if you need to, if things aren't working one way or you see another opportunity.
Well, no, that's a great point. And many of our customers had to adapt with COVID. For example, if we take the example of Carly in Churchill, like a lot of her production was going out to local institutions, restaurants, and hotels and whatnot. And with COVID, all of those places shut down from one day to another. So luckily for her, she already had a little bit of the subscription going on, but she really focused all our attention to our subscription and was able to pivot very quickly. I think if one thing the COVID situation showed us is that we have to be adaptable, and the beauty of operating, of growing and selling food is that people will always need to eat. It's just a matter of the way we get them access to the produce might just need to be adapted.
Definitely. And we'll also, for everyone, we'll be sharing as well some clips from Carly's webinar too in the follow-up. So you'll be able to kind of see and hear more about her distribution model. And this was filmed in the middle of COVID. So I think she did speak a bit about how she changed her distribution model throughout. And for the next question, it would be along the lines as well of distribution. We have examples of local farmers who are adding fresh greens to either whether it be a cafe or to a retail sidekick. So examples as similar to Carly, but kind of how our farmers are diversifying, and also how many farmers we have using each of our various models.
Yeah, so don't put me in the exact numbers, but so as I mentioned, we have 31 projects running or like getting installed at the moment. Roughly half of them are under like operated by communities and mainly indigenous communities, and within those communities, the type of model that they use varies between wholesale, direct to consumer, or impact. But we have a great video from Norway House Tree Nation that shows how they are delivering their produce to the local high school. We have a video from Gimak Mackay, which is an indigenous-led nonprofit in Prince Rupert I mentioned a couple of times during the webinar, on how they are going direct to consumer. But then out of the other project we have quite a few projects that are run and operated by school, either on the K-12 or on the higher ed. And here they are either like producing for themselves or producing. The direct to consumer model here is basically selling the weekly box to the parents of the students. And so they basically a new healthy Girl Scout cookie or food program. Instead of selling a coupon for pizza, they will be buying local like produce grown in the farm in the school. And then we do have quite a few either non-profit running social enterprise like Crisp you have on the Chrysalis in Edmonton, or we have few co-op grocery store, independent grocery stores that are growing produce within the store to either differentiate themselves from, like, let's say, the competition in the community, or to really add value to their customer base by creating very high value produce, or them to, taking control of the supply chain and guaranteeing like a fresh supply of produce regardless of the external condition. And then we have also a few farmers that are like the one we will be installing in September that comes to mind very quickly is in Quebec, and they are currently a dairy farm producer, and they want to diversify their revenue to start growing leafy greens to their local community, and will be running a direct to consumer model starting September.
Awesome, quite a variety. I think it does break down quite far, and just so everyone can see that Stephanie in the Q&A tab, she's another member of our marketing team, and she's just listed some of those resources that Flo shared. So you'll be able to watch those, and we'll also include them in the follow-up as well from this webinar. And a reminder, you'll get the full recording and the slides. We have a few minutes left, so we're gonna hop on to our last questions, and I'll have Flo just kind of share as well where you'll be able to follow up with us if you're not able to get your question in before the end, or you want to follow up directly with Nick as well. It's just our website, social media, and additionally that we'll have our final session that will focus more on financing with Farm Credit Canada. We're very excited for on August 10th, so on Tuesday in about 2 weeks. And our final question will be, do you have a breakdown showing the CapEx, OpEx, and revenue along with showing income? So do we have an option where you can see both, or is that?
We don't have like a standardized one, because at this point we might be quite off from the true representation of your specific project. That's really, where Nick will be working with you directly. So, those slides are the purpose of giving you kind of a rough idea, but your labor costs might be different, your electricity costs might be unique, the market that you're in, might be very specific. So I think we always take all of this into consideration when drafting out a project proposal and an estimate of operating cost. So we don't have that, but I will, in those slides, I will encourage you to look at kind of the average profit you can estimate from the model. That doesn't take into account financing, because as you will see in August 10th, but you have multiple ways to finance your farm, and based on the financing direction you're taking, that changes a little bit the profit or the return investment that you are looking at.
Definitely, and I think that's a great point to make. I think following up with the Nick and kind of going really in depth on what your own project specifications are is definitely the key to kind of get that information and a breakdown that's definitely accurate. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much to Nick and Flo for taking the time to share all that great information. And again, don't forget to follow up with us either on social media or directly or through our website. And we hope to see you all on August 10th as well.
Thank you very much, everybody. Hope it was informative and helpful.
Yeah.